Carrie, it's like this. It's this constant juggling act. You're juggling work, you're juggling home life, and you're trying to strike a balance.
Yeah. And now add in COVID, where you're doing all the juggle all under the same roof. Well, you know what? We've got some armchair therapy today. And this is Chick to Chick.
Carrie, it is one of the great stressors of life, trying to do it all, trying to have this work-life balance. You're juggling work, you're juggling life, and you're trying to strike this balance. I mean, how much time do I spend at the office? How much time do I spend at home? And how do you achieve things so that things balance out? And as you pointed out, boy, COVID's really messed things up. Thanks, COVID.
Yeah. I mean, I guess your change of scenery is going from one room to the other room. And it's just really a struggle. I mean, a lot of times, if you were working, you were leaving the house so you could put all of that behind you, whatever laundry and whatever stuff you didn't get done. You can tap out of that. You can refocus and then go to work and put all your efforts into that. Now more than ever, I feel like it is a real mastery of having a balance of everything. And I don't know that we have the answers today, but I think talking about it is just super important.
Yeah. And I think that the solution could be different for different people, but just to add some perspective, and I think that you and I have dealt with this, and we kind of came up with a solution and things that work for us. Let's talk about first working from home. When you were at the office, you were able to walk out the door and kind of shut that door and put your work behind and kind of put it on hold until the next day. Well, working from home, you're kind of trapped because you're there and you get one more email. And even though you know that quitting time might be at 5 o'clock, that email comes through.
That?
I don't know.
Do you?
Yeah. That email comes through or the text comes through or that phone call. And you're like, one more. One more. And the next thing you know, it's 8 o'clock. And so I had to stop and think to try to get things under control. And I needed to set boundaries and limits for myself to get this under control, because when this whole thing started, I was working from 6 a.m. until midnight, and that is not a healthy thing to do. And so one of the things that I have decided to do for me to get this under control and to achieve that balance is to have boundaries and limits. And so I impose those things on myself, even during the workday. I'll stop and take a break. I'll go for a walk, or I'll stop and take another break and do something else. But we really need to get this under control.
And hallelujah, Flora, because you were just crazy. Going. Crazy. And even just talking with you recently, it's the middle of the afternoon. I'm proud of you because you take a walk. And that's the best thing to do, because, I am on in a similar situation whereby I don't really have this, 9 to 5 situation, whether it's what we're doing with this podcast or my other endeavors. And it can be 7, 8 o'clock at night that I am working on something. But the way that I'm balancing is that I'm saying, okay, let's take the priorities of the things where I need to communicate with people who are engaging during a work time, 9 to 5. And if I don't really need to have those conversations with those people during that time, and I have other things that I want to take care of, then so be it. If from 7 to 9 o'clock at night is another time for me to sit down and do some work. So in this COVID era, I feel like I have more control over how I want to chunk up my day with the things that are important to me than to be so concerned about, I have to get this done from 9 to 5, and then I can only do this at a certain time. So I kind of feel a little bit better. I took a lot of that stress off myself.
Yeah. And you hit on something that's important. It's flexibility and looking at your day and determining what is important to do and what isn't so important to do to achieve that balance. Something else that I want to bring up, and this is when life was quote unquote normal, and I was working at a normal job. I was working a lot. I was working 14 hours a day, and that might have been on top of traveling 4 hours a day, 2 hours to get to work and 2 hours to get home. And it was just work, 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 work. I had time for nothing else. And this went on for years. And this is really important. I loved my job. I loved my employer, but I didn't necessarily love my life. I didn't like what was happening. And I looked at it and I didn't love how this whole thing was playing out. And so I visualized what I wanted my life to look like. I wanted to have children. I wanted to have a family. And I had to make a hard decision. And sometimes to achieve that balance, you have to make tough decisions. I looked at that current employer and I knew what I wanted. And it was a really tough pill to swallow, but I knew I was not going to be able to achieve that balance and to achieve the life that I wanted by continuing to work for that employer. And again, I loved the employer and I loved the job. I loved everything about it. But there were certain circumstances and situations that I knew things were not going to change. And so I made a tough choice. And I left that job and I took another job. And, it was not on the same caliber as that other employer was. But I use this phrase often that I took a professional demotion for a personal promotion.
That's a really good saying.
A professional demotion for a personal promotion. And I was able to continue to do what I love to do. I worked for somebody else. Again, it was a tough pill to swallow on a professional level, but it so improved the quality of my life and that I was able to achieve that balance. And sometimes we need to make tough choices and you need to look at situations and say, this is not working for me to get what you want to get that balance.
Yeah. And I was sort of on the other end of that, whereby my personal life and work life, I found I needed to shift. So I really demoted on the work life part of it to be a stay-at-home mom. And the downside of that after a while was I felt like I was losing my footing. Now I needed a work life because I really love to work. I've been working since I was like inside 13 years old. So I wasn't ever afraid of work. But you bring up the point of you want to have a family and you want to be able to do other things. And that's where I was. And so I had to figure out another balance. And that was, how do I do something outside of being a mom and a wife that also brings me joy, that makes me feel like a balanced person? And so I, little by little, was adding things into my work life and kind of slowly nurturing my career moves. And that made me feel a lot better because I was able to be around my kids a lot more, but still stay in the game, keep my feet wet, and never really forget about who I was at my core. So that's kind of how I did my balance.
Well, and again, it was a personal promotion, wasn't it?
Right. Right.
The personal promotion. The thing about women, and I wish we wouldn't do this, but I think sometimes we are our own worst enemies and we get inside our own heads and we beat ourselves up. When you're at work, you feel guilty because you're not at home. When you're home, you feel guilty because you're not at work. And it's this vicious cycle. And men, on the other hand, they don't feel guilty about anything.
I didn't necessarily feel guilty not working, but what I did feel for a while is, wow, I have so much to give and I could have really had a better career, so to speak, if I had stayed in that lane. So sometimes I think, did I balance a little too more on my personal and not enough on my professional? Because I did aspire for other things that aren't just going to, just not going to happen anymore. But I think at the end of the day, I'm never going to look back, and say, daggone it, I really wished I worked a lot more. That's the end of it. I'm not going to. And I think as you mature and you start to realize what's most important, and that there's things that you just don't need anymore. And it's okay to start going after what you want. And
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Again, as I said, just envision what you want your life to look like.
Yeah.
And
do
then
it.
Figure it out and do it. And you also need to come to the realization that you're not going to have that balance every single day.
Nope.
Some days you might give more to your job than you can to your family. And the next day you might give more to your family than you can to your job. But the secret is that at the end of the day, it's got to work out, that there is a balance there. And it's just like a relationship, right?
Yeah.
If you're the one who's giving all the time and the other person's taking, you're getting out of that relationship, or at least
it's exhausting.
I am, you know? Mm-hmm. So as long as it balances out, I think it can work for you. So there you have it. Just a little armchair
therapy.
Some armchair therapy to strike that balance with your home life and your work life.
Yeah. And I hope that we brought a little perspective to you and whatever's tossing around in your head, because we're just women. We talk about the things that we're talking about with all of our friends. And we really hope that whatever we were able to talk about today and share some of our personal opinions are helping you. And we always appreciate you being with us. We really do. So we hope that you'll come back again to listen to us chirp about another topic.